Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. I'm doing a video today, and this is another political video because I can't stop doing those. But I'm trying to cut back on them a little bit because things seem to be possibly getting better, at least temporarily, in the United States with regards to stuff. And obviously, there's things that are still piss me off and still are out. You can be outraged about, but nevertheless, if I'm able to go out and freely associate with people without having to do certain things or do various things, I'm a little bit happier because I haven't done that in so long. But this video is just a acknowledgement of why I continue to still support a few people that on YouTube, especially, that are probably do not agree with my complete takes, like on the virus situation and stuff. And that was, like, for example, Kyle Kulinski. So I'll explain this why I do still support him, because pretty much, other than that one issue, I agree on probably 75 80% of what he says in his videos. And that's a lot, because if you have a certain opinion politically, I mean, someone like me, I've always been an outsider to some extent with politics, because I grew up in a very Democrat household, somewhat dissident liberal, but that depends on what you mean by that, of course. My grandfather used to give me all this, like, fairness and accuracy at reporting pamphlets and all this shit. He's like total leftist. So, but I think he got sick of the hypocrisy and a lot of the dogmatism on the left as well at some point. So that's kind of like me. I was compared to him once by a relative, and I'm like, first I was bothered by it because of the person saying it, but at the same time, I'm like, well, he was angry. I probably smile more than he did in some ways, but I don't know how he was at my age, of course, because I wasn't alive. But it's kind of funny. But anyways, I support people like Kyle Kulinski. I still watch Crystal Ball and some of these people. Now, I cannot stand Dave Pakman or the Young Turks or Humanist Report or some of these people that are just totally, or Vaush, some of these people that are just totally, like, to me, they're off the rails into neoliberal territory, or apologist territory at least. And I can't really stand that, and Kulinski, at least, I mean, maybe the default for him is to still support Democrats, but I think it goes well beyond that, because he doesn't really talk about that all that much. He talks a lot about censorship. I mean, if you look at half his videos, he's talking about how these people censored this or tried to censor that on both the right and left, and he talks about hypocrisy. Something that I like to talk about as well. So I mean, speaking of the virus stuff, he doesn't really talk about the people, this mayor or this governor got exposed not wearing a mask, or doing this or that. But nevertheless, he does talk about a lot of hypocrisy of both sides of the aisle, economic stuff. So I still watch him. I still like him. I have to cringe sometimes when he puppets some of the stuff that they say, as far as, the same thing that they say over and over again about this or that. But he's even called out. I mean, he's still one of the people on the left that still calls out Big Pharma too, to a certain extent. So you can call him a useful idiot or whatever. He just happens to have a different opinion. But if you have that 10% different opinion about the crisis, the virus stuff, and then 90% of everything else, is decent, to me, essentially, you've made up for that small piece that I disagree with. Now, the majority of people that are into the mainstream narrative of the virus and stuff, the mainstream narrative, whatever you want to call that, majority of them are coming from this other place all entirely that I disagree with, because it's not like the two go hand in hand, but there is this tendency of these people that are on the left that are totally into that narrative to have this apologetic attitude towards the mainstream establishment people on the left, like Biden, whoever. For one. For two, they also have contradictory points of view towards other things. I don't know what it is about these things that go together, because there is this small segment of people on the left that are espousing those narratives, but at the same time they're consistent in other ways. Like they talk about patent waivers and stuff like that, that whole thing. For the most part, they do not talk about that. I don't notice your average Karen on Twitter that wears 10 masks talking about calling for the companies to waive the patents. Yeah, I don't see that level of consistency among most of those people, and that's what bothers me about it. Because if you had more of those people be more consistent in the other areas, then they would have more weight to their arguments. Period. Well, they could say, "Oh, well, I'm for Medicare for all, and patent waivers and all this stuff, but I also support all the mandates and stuff." It's like, but that disconnect for most of these people. They just totally go along with whoever has a D after their name, or whoever professes to be anti-Trump or whatever. It's really sickeningly obvious that the hypocrisy is there. So that's why I still support people that have that mainstream narrative to some extent, some of them. But at the same time, we'll attack all the other stuff around that narrative, the people that are pushing that. And I don't know what connects the two things: neoliberal establishment, woke, corporate leftism, quote unquote. I don't even think it's not leftism, really. It's just whatever you want to call it. And this sort of pro mainstream virus narrative. I don't know why those two go hand in hand so well. Because even on the left, because maybe the left has been so corrupted by, falling asleep during Obama, the whole Trump thing, Trump derangement syndrome, the whole virus stuff, like making these political sides and stuff. Maybe they've been so corrupted by the establishment, who wants it that way, so they remain in power, that they don't question things. Russell Brand, I'm sure people call him an anti-vax Nazi now because he's questioning the emergency powers of Trudeau or whatever. It's like, so for the most part, like, people that question the narratives to some extent are still, to me, the remnants of the left from back in the day. Like even Jon Stewart, look at him. He's pretty on board with a lot of the mainstream stuff, right? But he dares defend Joe Rogan. He dares question the Wuhan thing. It's one of those things that's pretty interesting, that the people that are telling the truth that are on the left are the people that are still, remember back in the day when you were called a terrorist if you supported you were called a terrorist if you didn't support the war in Iraq, or people remember that. But a lot of these people that are pushing these narratives and pushing the mandates and stuff are like, don't remember that. They don't have that connect. They don't attack other, they just go along with Democrats, I love Biden. He's such a great man, It's just like, it's so strange. But I don't know where this disconnect came from, because if there were more people on the left, I mean, Peter Dow is one example of someone else that like buys into the, well, he's a little bit neurotic, to be honest with you, but like, he's totally into the mainstream narrative as well about the virus, but he's totally attacking Biden for it and attacking the neoliberals and all that stuff. So, but it seems like these people, a lot of people that are out there, the people that are leftists are less, at least like more moderate, or even, well, obviously in Jimmy Dore or Jackson Hinkle or people like that's case, actually pretty much against the narrative, And it's not the people that are really stocking up on N95s and fucking washing their hands with sanitizer if I pass them by, or, or want you to have a scan a QR code for the rest of your life with the 50th booster when you're age 55, I mean, to get into the grocery store or whatever. Those people that are the most into that seem to be not on the left, but actual like corporate Democrat types, or they're sort of a mixture of, they're like a little bit of a halfway there, because like maybe they like AOC, but they think Biden's done a good job, and like, oh, we could have Medicare for all one day, but don't force the vote, people like that. They're like gradualists, but they're still like supposedly woke and all this shit, and they'll police your language and all this stuff. So there's this weird correlation between, and I've talked about it before, there's also a correlation between these politicians who push these harshest mandates and the hypocrisy. I don't know about Trudeau, but you saw Boris Johnson, what happened to him, Newsom, Lightfoot, both Cuomo's, by the way, just all these people that one way or the other, they violated their own guidelines with regards to the virus stuff. They were never held accountable to it in any substantial way. And yet they're the ones that pushed it the most. These, like the governor here, Evers, he's not like, he's just kind of he's kind of weak sauce. He's not like I mean, he was pretty fervently for another mask mandate and maybe another lockdown or something, but he's not like coming out and saying every day like blah blah blah. He's not like the same as some of the people that are out there. At the same time, he's pretty weak, because it's kind of it's reddish state. It's a pink state, it's a purple state. Not a red state, but it's definitely not blue like some of the states. But that is kind of like the thing that I think about this is that the people that are on the left that believe the narrative but are actually on the left, at least they usually have more compassion for people that don't believe the narrative, like Kyle does. They understand why. That's the major reason. I think this is what I've kind of answered my own question, because they understand why people don't believe the narratives that are pushed. They understand the mistrust of the government and the medical professionals or scientists or whatever. They understand why people have this. They may not have a good reason to push the other side, but they at least understand that why people are distrustful to some extent. And that's the major difference between these people that are just total Democrat party bootlickers and, these leftists that still support mandates or testing, whatever, or masks or whatever. And that's really like the substantive difference between someone like Kyle Kulinski and like fucking Cenk Uygur, for example, or, these people. It's like, you don't really, and Cenk Uygur used to be the person to understand a Trump supporter back, 4 or 5 years ago. He was a lot better about that kind of stuff. But you see these people, these commentators, and it depends on the person, but some of them are just totally lost. Like the View. It's like they're not even talking about science that's current. I notice a lot of people are pushing these narratives that are like 2 years old, or almost like a year and a half or a year old, like still saying stuff that even like the cat dog cat will say, listen, not true anymore. Like from the other side, from the left, from the pro government response, government measures crowd. Like, I'm not going to go into that on this video, but there's still people saying this stuff that it's even Fauci would say, well, that's not true. Like from the other side. I mean, I even saw someone on Twitter and I've heard people in real life too that I know have said some of this stuff, but I even saw someone on Twitter mention fomites. It's like, it's like fucking June 2020, like kind of shit, but it's pretty funny. Nevertheless, I have to take it with a grain of salt, when someone like Kulinski does some kind of video about this or that, and he's like totally puppeting the mainstream words like reduce hospitalizations and are known to be reduce hospitalizations and deaths. It's like the cat dog has the website, like he's reading it from the teleprompter or something, and that's fine. That's fine because he's after the same people. I'm sure he doesn't like the Klaus Schwabs of the world any more than we do, but most of the people, I'd say the majority of people that are pushing the mainstream narratives the pro-mandate, I dare I say pro-mask, even however controversial it sounds, the pro-mask, pro-mandate people, most of them that are on the left are not really on the actual left, because they're not like the ones that are most loudest, I should say. They're not like the it's not like the some see these Marxist groups or something like world socialists, whatever. It's not like they're it's not like they're the most like the biggest mask Karens or something in the world. Of course they're pro that stuff, a lot of them, but it's not like they're saying it like you're a murdering selfish psychopath who supports Trump if you don't wear a mask. They don't say that stuff. They're not the most loudest about it, most of them. It's these mainstream, usually upper or upper middle class liberals, champagne socialists, limousine liberals that are saying this the most. And you notice that it's not these people that are like for the working class or anything like that. Like, you might see an article once in a while. They're like, oh, the people that have suffered the most, and all that. Someone like Kyle has said, the world's biggest upward transfer of wealth. You don't see your average Karen on Twitter talking about that are attacking people for not wanting to be flash a card at the bar or whatever. I don't mean an ID to get a drink. I mean just to get in the damn bar. So that's my conclusion about that. It's a thesis that I have. I think the what they call the shit libs are the most for mandates, or the most for all these public health measures, in that it happens to be a political winning point for their cause and their virtue that they feel. But people that actually look at everything in a nuanced way are more intelligent than just watching the mainstream media, even if they're on the left, even they're pro-mandate, pro-mask. They do not act the same way about it. Even the ones that are pro, they don't act like that. They're these people, they're on these shows and all this stuff. Oh my God, they're such a terrible, problematic person. Oh, you're a racist if you don't get the vaccine. Yeah. These people are just fucking nuts. I mean, yeah. What are you going to say with these people? But, like I said, I still agree with someone like Kyle Kulinski 60-70% of the time, so I'll still watch with what he says. I agree with someone like Six X and Hammer 40 or 50% of the time, maybe sometimes more. I still watch some of these people, and I know it's problematic that I watch 6 and Hammer because he has some weird friends. I will say that. That's one thing I don't agree with. Some of his alliances are a little bit problematic. That's the main thing for me. What he said 12 years ago about the verboten subject from Germany that happened in Germany, or because of Germany, 80 years ago. That's a different story because it's a very nuanced answer to that question. But that question, that's funny. Sorry, it's just making a bad joke. A question that I would have been killed because of that too, actually. But yeah, I don't think that still watching Kyle Kulinski is bad. And I know Jimmy Dore bashes him all the time, and sometimes Kyle deserves it, a little bit of that ribbing. I think Dore is very vindictive, though. That's the one character flaw that I see with him. Very vindictive. I mean, he was attacking Zubin Damania the other day, which is, Zubin Damania has the most safe, opinion that's not really, he's not sitting there saying, we have to have mandates. He's actually pretty anti-mandate, even though he says to take the shot. Fine. So does Prasad. But Prasad is definitely red pilled as far as everything else goes. He's pro shot, but he's not, not sitting there saying that everybody has to take it all the time, get the 500 Wi-Fi boosts a year or whatever. So there's a spectrum here, but yeah, on that spectrum, most of the left has turned into an authoritarian, hypocritical group of people that are absolutely contradictory to everything a lot of them once stood for. I don't mean just like a relative that told me he just went to anti-Vietnam war protests to get laid. I don't mean contradictory in that way, but just actually contradictory to what they believed before 20 years ago. It's like I see these memes about Epstein or about whatever, and there's these Facebook groups, conservative whatever, blah blah blah, and it just reminds me of left wing. If there would have been a Facebook 20 years ago, they would have been left wing memes. They're totally against corruption and hypocrisy and the billionaires and all this shit. And it's just is the right turning into what the left used to be? It's just so weird. But anyway, it's just some food for thought. That's about all.